If you're an entrepreneur and you have multiple no-code app ideas, how do you know which one to build first? This is a question we get a lot from entrepreneurs going through our training or who are working directly with us. They are entrepreneurs, and so they have a lot of great ideas, and a lot of them come into this wanting to build multiple no-code apps, but they can't really decide which one they should be building first. Now, this should not be a guessing game. There's actually a logical way for you to think through this and really prioritize the right app idea first. Now, to be clear, there are a few different scenarios in which the decision-making process on this is a little bit different. So make sure you stick around until the end of this video because we're going to go through all of these, and I want to make sure you can make the best decision for you and for your app. So we're going to go through all these different scenarios. Now, first, if you're new around here, my name is Kristen, and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps, where we help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to either start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding and with no technical background required. So if you have multiple app ideas, how do you know which one to build first? Well, we're going to dive right into this, and I'm going to jump over to the whiteboard here and share my screen. So the very first thing you need to decide is why you want to build this app or any app in the first place. Okay, if you have multiple app ideas, what is your goal with your first app? Now, there are usually two options. The first option is that you want to learn. You want to learn more about the development process. You want to learn more about using no code tools. And so you just want to build an initial app just to kind of get a feel for things before you dive all the way in. Now, the other option is that you want to quickly launch and ideally scale an app-based business, or you want to launch an app within your existing business so that you can scale that business. So you first have to decide which one of those two categories you fall into in order to make the right decision. Now, for this first scenario that we're going to talk through, I'm going to assume that you are building this initial app, whichever app it ends up being, because you want to launch it and you want to turn it into a business, or you want to use it to scale your existing business. Okay, so we're looking at actually building in order to monetize. Okay, so with that in mind, there are three things that I want you to think about. So get all of your app ideas that you have, write them out, um, and for each of them, consider these three things that we're going to go through. Okay, the first thing that I want you to think through is the severity of the problem. Okay, now your app, whichever app you build, it's going to solve a problem, right? All of your app ideas, you've come up with them because you've identified problems that need to be solved, or at least that's how you should come up with them. Okay, you're solving problems. So think through the multiple app ideas that you have. And again, with the goal of quickly launching and ideally monetizing, scaling your app as soon as you can, think about which one solves a problem with a really high level of severity. Now, what that means is it's pretty simple. Basically, the problem is a big one. and the effects that it has on people, or the consequences that people experience because of the problem, those are severe. All right. When there's a severe problem, people are going to be more inclined to spend the money or to invest resources in order to solve it quickly. And remember, when we're looking to launch an app quickly, build quick traction, scale quickly, we have to consider some different factors. So that's not to say you can't launch an app that solves a problem that's not super, super severe. There are lots of apps that serve different purposes, and not all of them have this really severe effect on people's lives or on people's businesses. But with the goal of launching quickly and gaining traction quickly, that gaining that traction quickly, that's where the severity of the problem comes in, because the more severe the problem, the quicker it's going to be for you to roll out the app and move forward and kind of grow the business from there. So think of your different app ideas and think and kind of compare the severity of the problems that they solve. Okay, now the second thing that I want you to think about is the willingness of your target market to spend money, to invest resources into solving this problem. So we're going to say market's willingness to pay. You can solve a really severe problem, but if your target market isn't willing or able to invest the money into solving it, then you're going to have a problem monetizing and scaling that app. That's not to say that you can't. There are plenty of apps and resources, aimed at target markets that they might not be looking to invest a lot of money into solving their problems. But remember, our goal here is launching quickly and then growing quickly, gaining traction quickly. Okay, so you have to look at your target market and their ability to pay, because if you launch your app and no one's going to pay for it, or it's really hard for you to get people to pay for it, then it's going to be somewhat slow moving, especially if you're an entrepreneur who is a solo founder, or maybe you have a small team, maybe you don't have, all the resources in the world like bigger companies would, right? So you have to look at this and consider it as well. So what's the severity of the problem, right? So think through your apps, which one has the highest level of severity, and what's the market's willingness to pay? Think through your apps. Which target market is more likely to pay for a solution to the severe problem that you are solving? Okay, so that's the second thing to consider. Now, the third thing to consider is on the technical side. So this is less external and more internal. But you want to ask yourself, how advanced does the app need to be? Okay, or how advanced would this app idea be? When you're just starting out, when you're building your first app and your goal is to build that quick traction, look at the app idea that is is a little bit simpler. Okay? And I'm talking about the technical components. So I'm just going to say in this section, less advanced. Now, what I mean by that is, if your app idea needs tons of really complex integrations, tons of really complex features and functionality, it's going to be harder to move quickly with an app like that when you're just starting out. But if you can identify one of your app ideas that's maybe a little bit simpler, it doesn't need, all these complicated components involved, you're going to be able to move more quickly in the beginning. And not only that, but building this first app that's a little bit less complex, it's going to give you a lot of the know-how to then be able to move into the more complex apps later on. Okay, so two of these sections here in the diagram, we're looking at external facing factors, and one is more internal. So you need to consider these three things for each of your different app ideas. Now, when you have, let me grab my highlighter here. When you have a problem that you're solving that is really severe, or the consequences your target market are experiencing because of it, when those are severe, and you have a target market that is willing to pay for a solution, what you have here is demand, right? You're going to have more demand for this app. And again, that's a really good thing when you're just starting out and you want to gain that quick traction. The higher the demand, naturally, the easier that's going to be for you to do. And when you have an initial app that you're building that's a little bit less advanced, it's a little simpler in terms of the technical components. And again, you have this market that you know is willing to pay for a solution, well, what you're going to have here is exactly what we've been talking about. You're going to have quick traction because you can get a relatively simple first version out the door that solves at least the major core problem that your target market is experiencing. And if they have a willingness to pay for a solution, then you're going to be able to build traction a lot more quickly with that. Your solution doesn't need to be really complex or even really robust to just start solving those initial core problems. It can expand as you evolve. But if you look at these two things together, it's just going to help you get started a lot more quickly, which is going to help you not just learn how to understand markets and learn how to understand uh, marketing and just the all of those different components of launching an app, of launching a business, but it's going to help you understand the technical side of it too. And there's a balance that you have to experience there. Now, when you have a little bit less of a complex app that you're building first, and you do have that high severity of the problem that you're solving, that problem that you're solving, it has lots of consequences, or people are experiencing lots of consequences. What you have here is this kind of builds on what we were just talking about. You kind of have a balance of your development and your marketing. We're going to call this a balance. So what we see sometimes happening is entrepreneurs will step into the app space, the no code app development space, and they'll either go all in on the technical side of their development or of their launch process of bringing this app to life, or they'll go all in on the marketing side. And what happens is when they go all in on the marketing side, then they usually come out on the other end with an app that it's not really reliable. It's not scalable because they've sort of skimped on the technical side. And so what they find is that when they start bringing their users on board, they have to rebuild the app. And it's not fun to have to do that once you're finally bringing those users on board. That's not it's not what you want to do. But then we have other entrepreneurs who only focus on the app, right? They don't think about any of the external sort of messaging, how to have conversations with people or anything like that. And you can have the best app in the world, but if you don't even know how to talk about it in a way that helps convert users, even your initial beta users, then you're going to have a problem on the other side where things are going to stall out on the other side of your development. But when you're building an app that is a little bit less complex when you're starting, but it still solves a problem with a high level of severity, then you create sort of a balance, because now you don't have to figure out all of these advanced things just yet on this first app. But on the marketing side, things are going to be a little bit easier for you, because if the problem you're solving has a really high level of severity, it's always going to be easier to convey to people why they need it. And this isn't always obvious. For some app entrepreneurs, they start talking about their app, and their target market has no idea why they would ever even need it. And you don't want to be in that position. So if you look at these two combined, you sort of create a balance for yourself that again just kind of drives back to that quick traction. So when you have all three of these things, then you have kind of found your sweet spot in terms of which app idea to build first. Again, looking at when you have multiple app ideas, just take them all through this process. Ask each of these questions for each idea, and it's going to help you bring clarity to this decision. So instead of having to just kind of guess, you can actually logically prioritize the one that's going to help you move forward in the most efficient way possible, move forward the most quickly, build that early traction. Now, there's another scenario here, though. If you're just building this initial app to learn, right? You don't necessarily need to launch, monetize, scale quickly. You really just want to learn. You want to get a feel for things. Well, then we can kind of just pick out one section here. And that would be this one. Okay. If you're just looking to learn, go for the less advanced app first. Now, I understand that talking about a less advanced and a more advanced, or a less complicated and a more complicated app, it's a little bit vague. And it is sort of app to app and person to person. But in general, if you have different app ideas, regardless of how much you know about the tech space or about no code development or anything, you probably already have a general idea of which app idea is just going to be more complicated to build, right? It's pretty easy to get a general gauge on that. So if you're just building this initial app to go through a learning process, focus on the less complicated app first, because what that's going to help you do is sort of build these foundational blocks for yourself, where you're building up a really good understanding of the development process, of the process of creating and launching an app. Even if you're not, launching this yet, you're still going to learn so much about that process. And then you can just build on top of that when you move into the next app that's maybe a little bit more complicated. Well, now, instead of having to figure out all of these different complex issues or these different complex features or functionalities all at once, you can already have those foundational blocks in place. You already have a really good base understanding, and now you can just build on top of those, right? So you can kind of think of it like a pyramid here, where you've built the base and now you're just continuing to build on top of it. Okay. So if you're just building an app to learn at first, that's how I would go about deciding which one to build first. Now, there's one other scenario that you might sort of fall into, or maybe one other category, and that is if you're building an app for your own business. Now, the diagram here that you see on the screen, this can apply to that situation in a lot of ways, but you can also simplify this a lot if you're just building an app or multiple apps for your own business, which is often the case, right? When you're running your own business, you probably have lots of tools that you could or will be building over time. So you might be wondering, well, which one do I start with? And I would say in that case, look at two things. The very first thing that you want to look at is which one is going to have the highest ROI for you. Okay. So when you're building an app for your business, which one is going to give you the most return? That's a clear indicator of the highest priority app. So that should, in most cases, be the deciding factor for you. But if it's not, if you have multiple apps which you think will pretty much give you the same level of return, then I would go back to this side over here where you're looking at, okay, which one can help me just go through the learning process? So you can look at it from that lens as well. So if you're building an app for your business, you have multiple app ideas, multiple tools that you want to build, which one's going to give you the highest ROI? And then the next step, if you still need to decide which one's just going to help you kind of ease into that learning process and help build those foundational blocks for you. Okay. So for, each of these scenarios, you'll handle them a little bit differently, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of how to logically decide which app idea to build first, rather than just playing the guessing game. Because again, if you are an entrepreneur, then you probably have lots of good ideas. And it's good to be able to organize and prioritize those as you go. So I hope that was helpful for you. Now, if you are getting started with your app, or if you have started your first app, but you want to make sure you're headed in the right direction, we have a free training. It's a workshop where we guide you through some of the strategy that we use for building no-code apps. We talk about some of the tech components, And it's a great way to lay a foundation for your app, no matter which one you end up starting with. If you want to join in on that, it's completely free. You can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, and you can sign up for that to either get started, or if you've already started, at least make sure you are headed in the right direction. All right. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope that was helpful for you, and we'll see you in the next one.